I'm CommanderNici, and this is your favorite podcast on gaming. At least, I hope so. Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Nikki's Gaming Universe. I want to be honest with you, this episode almost didn't happen because every time when it comes to recording an episode to release it on schedule, I'm surprised that the week is already over and that, oh, surprise, I have to record an episode in time to release it so it can come out on schedule, which actually brings me to the topic of this episode. Just between us, dear listener, I literally just pulled the topic for this episode out of my ass because it's just the topic that I fucked up with. So why not talk about scheduling in video games in general? So without further ado, let's get into the episode. Scheduling in video games. And to be honest, when talking about scheduling and video games, you should talk about crunch too, but I think that's a topic for another episode because I definitely didn't prepare to talk about crunch in the video game industry. So I just want to go and talk a bit about scheduling because I think it's kind of interesting because some games just come out right before Christmas because obviously the big heads in on top of the company are like, yo, we gonna get that Christmas market because if a game releases right before Christmas, that's a perfect time. Because, you know, Christmas, the time of gift giving, and I'm not 100% sure how sales numbers work, but I'm just gonna assume it's pretty similar to how YouTube algorithm and other algorithm work, that the first hours or like the first week or month in a game's sale often say something about, oh hey, the people like it, we should get into making a second game or something like that, because I don't know, I think that's just how industries work. So as I said, I don't know how that really works, but that's just an assumption. And the thing is, I didn't really, I mean, I did pull that topic for this episode out of my ass, but the thing is, I kind of got the idea from the most recent Nintendo Direct, and I wondered, why don't more game companies do that, those stealth releases like they did with Pikmin 1 and 2. I mean, they were remakes, so it was just something they could literally do in the background and be like, yo, hey, surprise, you can buy Pikmin 1 and 2, the Switch port, right now. I mean, it said later today, but it was like, what, 2 hours later, so it still counts as right now. And with games getting more and more digital, I think it could be cooler to reduce expectation of release dates, to just stealth release them and be like, oh, by the way, here, look, the new game, it's out now. And I totally get that that doesn't count and go and work for all games, especially smaller indie games do need a build-up hype to get the perfect download and sales numbers on release and within the release week, but let's just say bigger games and bigger franchises just like The Last of Us, GTA, The Elder Scrolls, Fallout, big players like those definitely could do those kinda more or less stealth releases. And as I said, like bigger players could easily do those quote unquote stealth releases and just be like, hey, we have a new game, it's out now. And if nobody knows that they've been working on it, or like maybe there has been like whispers around that there's something the developer is working on, but nobody knows what it is. It's just like assumptions and theories, and maybe some data miners or people who have theories about, yo, The Last of Us is definitely gonna be a trilogy, or it's been that amount of years since the last title of this franchise came out. It's about time that something new would come, because there's enough lore and story possibilities for a next game. And big players definitely could, in my opinion, definitely could do those secret releases with just one big announcement saying, hey, the game is out now. Or maybe just next week, because, you know, as long as there are still physical games out there, it still needs to get into the shops. And or maybe a month ahead, because, you know, international shipping, something like that. But why isn't that a thing? I mean, I think there was something about I barely remember it. It's been a while. But I think Fallout 4 had a somewhat similar release thing, that they just put out a trailer and were like, yo, I don't know. And there is the problem. I didn't do any research for this episode. It's just rambling, but as far as I remember, there was something about Fallout 4 that came close to what I'm explaining, but the closest that really is the thing that Nintendo just recently did with the Pikmin games. And I think that's cool to just go and say, oh, by the way, the game is out right now. And what I wanna really say is, so many gamers, or I don't even want to call them gamers, because they are just way too entitled and put a bad light on the gamers in general. I'll just name them pissy entitled crybabies. So those pissy entitled crybabies always get angry when a game gets put back in schedule, because sometimes there's just a gremlin in the machine and some coding doesn't work. I've literally seen like pictures of developers doing something for fun, I don't know, some animation or something, and being like, look, there is this red cube beneath the world. I don't know where it comes from, I don't know what it does, but at this point I'm afraid to delete it. Because there's just some stuff that doesn't work right, and then at the same time does work right, because there's just, I don't know. I've heard so many stories and anecdotes about, look, there needs to be this hat right beneath that building in the game, or the entire game breaks. If that hat would be deleted. The game would become unplayable. There's something in the code that relies on the head beneath the building. And, you know, and as I said, like, obviously small indie games can't do things like that with being like, hey, the game is out right now. I mean, maybe if the concept and stuff is interesting enough and catches a big enough group of people to work, maybe, but in general, indie games obviously have less money for marketing and everything, but big companies, I don't understand why they just take their time putting everything they can into releasing the game whenever it's ready. And that would solve so many problems. It would solve the problem of crunch. If you don't have a deadline, you don't have to go into crunch. And additionally, it would solve the problem of releasing games unfinished with all the day one patches and releasing broken games. So if developers have all the time in the world to finish a game, that also would completely get rid of those critiques of unfinished games on release and day one patches. So that problem would also be solved if we got rid of scheduling. Obviously, I mean, maybe bigger games need hype to get the sales up, but there's just sometimes enough people who love a franchise that they would buy anything without thinking. Just like me with Mass Effect, I will buy anything that has the name Mass Effect on it. For some people, they think it was a mistake with Andromeda. I don't think it was a mistake. I like Mass Effect Andromeda. That's also a topic for another episode, so be ready for that. But I don't know. I just think if we got rid of scheduling altogether, except for like maybe indie games to build up the hype, it would make for a much better and happier, nicer, all the positive adjectives, environment in the gaming community and in the developer community, because if there's no crunch, the workers can be happy and see their families and just work on the game in the pace that works. And if the game is done, they can put out stuff like, hey, the game is out next month, so hey, let's do that. And maybe I'm making sense, maybe I'm not making sense. I just wanted to put out this episode, this quick, spontaneous thought about scheduling and my thoughts about it. So yes, maybe this episode was a little messy, but I still hope you enjoyed it. I'll leave an appropriate question in the show notes. You can find all important links in the show notes. Feel free to follow me on my social media on Instagram, Twitter and YouTube as @CommanderNici. And hear you next Tuesday on a new episode of Nicci's Gaming Universe. Bye.